After years and years of pleading from fans, from writers, from me, Chicago Bulls finally did it. They finally made some moves to kind of establish a direction other than we're going to be average or slightly above average. If things go really well, like what if we get hot? Things go well. Maybe we do it. Maybe this is our year. That was kind of the direction. And then this year they actually made a move at the trade deadline, though, not as much as we were wanting to see. They did something, but not a ton. Baby steps, I guess, is the best way to look at it. But they actually kind of established a direction, said this is how we're going to build our team. I don't think it's that much better, but it is a step in the right direction. Maybe things will work out. Maybe the ethical way of approaching it, of just trying to play hard and go out there and have fun, is going to actually work in their favor. Maybe the basketball gods will bless them with a nice pick in the lottery over the next two years. Maybe it doesn't happen, and then they just continue to be back in the play-in tournament every single year for the rest of existence. It's possible. We will see. We will dive into all things Chicago Bulls. Before we do that, I just wanted to remind you that BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for all your sports betting action. We've got baseball season in full swing. We've got the NHL and NBA playoffs. Tonight we only have one game, so lock in on Warriors Timberwolves game 2. If you want to get in on the action for that, BetOnline is a great place to do it. They have the largest selection of odds on everything from MLB to the NHL to UFC. BetOnline remains the number one online source for all your sports wagering info. And then in between the games, you can head over to the BetOnline casino. All the top Vegas-style games, including poker and a live casino. BetOnline, the game starts here. Okay, well, we're going to talk about the Chicago Bulls now, who went 39-43 this past season. Made it to the play-in tournament. And that is where their season ended. Yeah, made it to the play-in tournament, lost to the Heat despite having the home court advantage in that game. I think you can look at this as a positive season for the Bulls. I think in comparison to the last few years, they weren't entirely wrong in their assessment of, hey, we have young players and we want to see how they perform in the play-in tournament, and that we believe that experience will be good for them. I agree with that. That's on par. But if you look at, and this is just more of a general team building philosophy to me, if you look at who wins NBA championships, you have to have a top 5 player in the league. If you want to make a run in the playoffs, you have a top 5 player in the league. And what I mean by top 5 player is not, okay, if we're going to sit down and it's just the consensus, who everybody thinks the top 5 players are. So like right now it'd be like Jokic, SGA, Giannis, and then 2 others. And it's not really that important of a debate because that's not what I'm talking about. You need a player playing like a top 5 player in the league. So there are probably 15 to 20 guys in the NBA who have that capability of playing like one of the best players in the world. And we see that when teams go on runs. When Indiana made it to the conference finals, Tyrese Halliburton was playing like a top 5 player in the NBA. When Atlanta had their Eastern Conference Finals run a couple of years ago, Trae Young was playing like a top 5 player in the NBA. And obviously teams that make the finals and have top 5, like Dallas making it and losing obviously to Boston, but like you have Jason Tatum and Luka Doncic there. That's what happened last year. But that's what it takes to make it that far. When Minnesota made the conference finals last year, Anthony Edwards was playing like a top 5 player in the NBA at that time. That doesn't mean that a consensus top 5 player. That means a player that has the ability to raise their performance in the playoffs. And when they step on the court, doesn't matter who they're matched up against, they're one of the best players in the world. That's what it takes. I think at least one of those, and there's a number of other factors. But I'm saying, bottom line, when you're looking at roster construction, you need at least one of those guys. I don't think that Chicago has one of those players on their roster. So my general team building philosophy, which I haven't done this at the NBA level, so maybe everyone's going to say, who cares? But I would think that If you don't have one of those players on your roster, how do you get one? That's the key. Could it be through a trade for Giannis? The Bulls have been rumored to have some interest, or I think they were tossed around as a team. Maybe it's just Bulls fans just spewing it on Twitter. Maybe that's what I'm remembering. But you could see them potentially packaging something together. It may not be the best offer that Milwaukee receives. They may not even want to trade him in division, let alone conference. So they may require Chicago to give up more than they would a Western Conference team. And what does Chicago have left on that roster after they make a trade? Probably not enough to win the championship. So you can probably go ahead and cross that option off, because what they would have to give up to bring in a player of that caliber, they can't have, or they can't make that trade and still have enough left on that roster, because obviously, like I said, it's a lot more than just one player. I just think that's almost a non-negotiable if you just look at who has made championships. And maybe that is just the fact that their teams went on runs, so they have a better reputation from those seasons. But I think that's what it takes. A player that can elevate their game and in turn elevate the rest of the team. So what are the other options? You could sign a free agent, but let's be honest, it's been a long time since a player just straight up, like a superstar player, just straight up signed with another team. I mean, I guess the most recent example is Jalen Brunson, but at the time he wasn't considered like a true superstar. Paul George signed with the 76ers last year, but there's a reason that he was a free agent instead of being traded before he hit free agency. And I'm looking through, but like since I guess it was like Paul George, or excuse me, Kawhi signed with the Clippers and Paul George got traded to the Clippers, like that kind of like that summer. It's probably the last time anything like that happened. In the modern NBA teams, I guess since that kind of LeBron leaving to go to Miami era through Kawhi signing with the Clippers, that was when free agency was a big thing to get a star. Like stars are going to hit the free agency market. And then teams were like, well, why would we even let a player test the waters? We're going to make a trade. And players had no problem demanding out as well. So Chicago doesn't get that through free agency. So now you don't get through trade, you don't get through free agency. You have to get through the draft. That's my long intro to basically saying they need to look at getting a superstar in the draft. That goes for every team. But if you look at other teams, a lot of them have the player already. Not all of them. And the ones that don't, they have at least one or two guys that have that upside, or they're in the lottery. Like just going through a few teams outside of the top guys in the conference, because we know they do. Detroit this year broke out. They have Cade Cunningham. He's their guy. He has to prove that he is capable of that, but he's their guy that they believe is capable of playing like a top 5 player in the NBA. He hasn't done it yet, but that's who they believe. That's who I believe. Orlando has both Paolo Banchero and Franz Wagner have that type of upside. Miami doesn't. I mean, they have Tyler Hero and Bam Adebayo, who are phenomenal, but I don't think either of those guys are them. But they had it in Jimmy Butler, and now they're probably going to need to figure something out. I mean, even Atlanta has Trae Young. The 76ers have Joel Embiid and even Tyrese Maxey. Charlotte has LaMelo Ball. That's just in the East. If we look towards the bottom of the West, Spurs have Victor Wembanyama. Dallas has AD and Kyrie. Memphis has Ja Morant. Like somebody that whether you believe that they're a top 5 player, you probably, I said some of those names and you were probably like, oh yeah, no, there's like, I disagree with you. Straight up, like I don't think that player is capable of that. And that's fine, but those teams do. And that's why they've started to build their team around them. And again, a lot of other factors, injury luck, team fit, player development, other, depth. In the modern NBA with the new CBA, you have to have a lot of depth. You can't just go star heavy, makes it more difficult. I mean, there's reports that Boston's probably going to be looking to trade off some of their not young core, but their core, because they can't keep everyone around or they're going to have to pay the luxury tax. So that team isn't going to be able to stay together the way they have been in the last 2 years. it's difficult. So who is that player for Chicago? If you said Modest Buzelis, I think I can't get too upset because he's coming off a rookie year, but I don't think that he's that guy. I think he has a lot of upside. Don't think you can go ahead and pencil him in as superstar of the team or franchise player. Kobe White has been phenomenal, a breakout player. I don't think Kobe White is that good. I think he's really, really good player and got to continue moving him up my Dynasty rankings because I was lower on him in the past. He's probably the closest thing to that right now on the team. I just don't think that he's on that tier. Phenomenal player. We'll get into him. And I guess the other player would be Josh Giddey, but I don't think anybody thinks of Josh Giddey as a franchise player, as in the sense that, down 5 in the playoffs with a minute left, the ball's in Josh Giddey's hands, and you feel confident that like all of a sudden you're going to win this game because he's going to hit a tough shot and then get a stop and then hit another tough shot or something like that. You know what I'm saying? I just don't think that that's Josh Giddey's even like archetype, basically. I don't know. Chicago needs to get this thing figured out, and it's a great 2-year stretch to do it, because now obviously they probably could have leaned into this a little harder this year, but Cooper Flagg is there, and there's other players at the top of the lottery that have upside to be that guy. Whether you believe it or not, Dylan Harper has that upside. Ace Bailey has that upside. Probably a couple other players down the lottery have that upside. Will they hit it? Probably not all of them. Or you're going to get the best draft class of all time. But then if we look to next year as well, 3 players at the top of that class are that type of prospect. AJ DeBonsa, Cam Boozer, and Darren Peterson. So you don't even need, it's not like, oh, you have to get the number 1 pick or you're screwed. It's not like, 2 years ago in 2023, it was like everybody's tanking for Wemby. And it's like, yeah, sure, Brandon Miller and Scoot Henderson at the time, great consolations, but you're there to get Wemby. It's not like that next year. You have 3 players at the top that can be bona fide franchise players. So it's a great opportunity next year for a lot of teams, honestly, to tank. If you don't have the guy, tank. Now, I'm not a proponent, like, I guess, because teams tank, I think you have to like play the game. I think that tanking's bad. I'm not pro tanking as for like the league, but I'm saying for a team, and maybe it's also ethically tanking. You have to ethically tank. That's my other issue. But Chicago hasn't made the moves to do that. They traded away Zach LaVine finally, and that's not a shot at Zach LaVine, disrespectful to Zach LaVine. It's saying that they needed to reset and they waited way too long. They probably needed to trade Vucevic away with how well he was playing early season. Maybe they didn't like the return, but also he was worse down the stretch. Now what does his trade value look like? 1 less year on his contract, 1 more year on his knees. Not that he has bad knees, but just like 1 more year of wear and tear. They have some pieces. They have some guys, which we will talk about. But I want to see them lean in harder into a rebuild. And I think that they have the pieces to trade away to make that happen. Because I'm not a fan of, oh, we're going to tank by having these players and having them not play because of minor injuries. They're going to hold them out for weeks and weeks and weeks, and we're not going to communicate that. That's annoying. It's bad for the league. But, and you can look at it from the perspective of, oh, if they want to pay certain player $40 million to sit out to help the lottery, or to help their lottery odds, I guess it's their money to do that with. But if that just continues to happen, then league revenue probably goes down. They have less money to spend. Bad for the league, bad for the league, blah, blah, blah. We're not going to get into all the specifics of probably the effects of tanking. But to be clear, my stance is anti-tank or anti-unethical tanking. I think Chicago should ethically tank. They've fought for a playing spot too many times in a row to not. Okay, that's my long-winded intro on my, I guess, basically just begging Chicago to do something and commit to a roster direction. So now we'll talk about what this roster is going to look like. Mostly the same. The main things are Trey Jones and Taylor Horton-Tucker, unrestricted free agents. Javon Carter as a player option, not very impactful. They have a couple other restricted free agents, but the main one is Josh Giddey. What does he get paid this summer at 22, 23 years old? And we'll go ahead and pull him up on the screen just to talk about him. He'll turn 23 right before next season starts. So he's a very, very young player who broke out this season. Like, frankly, he did. Average 14.6 points, 8.1 rebounds, 7.2 assists, over a steal, 3.5, like 1.5 threes. Bunch of career highs, at least for rebounds, assists. Points weren't his career high. He averaged 16.6 points in year 2 for the Thunder. It's tough here to really like gauge what his value is, because when he's playing really well, like he did second half of this past season, the numbers are awesome. Like triple doubles, a ton of assists. Like he had a 17 assist game. He had a 19 rebound game, a 16 rebound game, or a few 16 rebound games, and some high scoring nights. He had a 28, 16, 11, 2, 3 triple double. And that's 2 steals, 3 blocks with 3 threes. And then the play-in tournament, lost to Miami, blowout loss, 25 points, 10 rebounds, 4 assists. Like on paper, just looking at numbers, you're like, oh, wow, those numbers look really good. Like, this guy's got to get a lot of money. Like, we should be paying him a big contract. I don't necessarily, and I don't think of this as like the common thought that everybody's like, oh, no, Josh Giddey's a superstar point guard now. Like, Chicago finally has the guy. But I think he did a lot of things well this year. And after things ended pretty poorly in OKC, it was like he bounced back well, responded well. I think it was a little bit of a slow start, but kind of figured things out along the way. Ended the year strong. Great timing for him, especially with, about to get a new contract. It's the best time to play well. Not saying contract year is the reason he played better, but it was good timing to play better. So we'll see what ends up happening. I don't know. Will a team offer him a contract that's too large for Chicago to match? I don't really see that, because I think it's probably just going to end up being Chicago just re-signing him. Maybe not even need to match a contract. But I think also it depends on how they build out this roster. If they believe in Josh Giddey, which you and I don't have to believe in Josh Giddey as a franchise player, when we were talking about, who can play like a top 5 player in the NBA. We don't have to believe that Josh Giddey can be like that. I don't. But if Chicago does and pays him enough for him to do that, the numbers are going to be really good. We just saw that this past season, especially down the stretch. He was one of the best players in fantasy basketball, very well-rounded. Free throw percentage is still subpar. Field goal percentage isn't great. Turnovers aren't great. But a guy that can approach that triple-double territory and give you a steal and a 3, like, that's valuable at 22 years old. I assume that he gets better. I don't see him becoming 23, 9 and 9, but I think 16, 8 and 7 is, that's not even that much more than what he did this year. And he was much better down the stretch. So just final 13 games. This is what's convenient for me to look at him on Basketball Monster. Final 13 games, including that play-in game, 21 points, 10.5 rebounds, 9 assists, 1.5 steals, 1.8 threes, almost 50% from the floor. Like, I don't expect him to do that, but I don't think he needs to do that. So it's a difficult way to value him because it may even just come down to your philosophy and how you play in a dynasty league. If we're just talking strictly the fantasy side of it, if you're looking for the players that have the opportunity, Josh Giddey's right at the top of the list. If you would rather bank on players that you believe in and be not invest in players that you don't believe in, even if NBA GMs do, and that's not saying, well, NBA GMs believe in this player, so and they know more than you, so you should. Because that doesn't always end up being right. Whether the I guess reasoning behind it is good or not, there's times where NBA management, NBA front offices, coaches believe in players and they don't pan out, and we can sit here and say, "Ha ha, I told you so." When in reality, we don't know probably 99% of what goes on in the locker room and why coaches and GMs believe in these players. We just can look at a few things and say, draw our conclusions. But if you just don't believe in Josh Giddey and don't want to invest in him, that's fine. I think that he's a valuable player because he's 22 years old, and we'll see what kind of contract he gets this summer. But I would assume that a team very much believes in him, and the numbers are really good in fantasy when that happens. So I think Josh Giddey is very valuable in dynasty formats. Young, well-rounded team that believes in him. That's important. Okay, we can talk about someone else with the Bulls right now. Um, we'll just start at the top and go with probably the player who's the best player on this team. That's Kobe White. Average 20.4 points, 3.7 rebounds, 4.5 assists per game. The 9 cap value isn't quite as good. It was just like Josh Giddey. Kobe White ended the season strong. Had some big games down the stretch as they kind of had that late run. Wasn't like this phenomenal winning streak, but they were pretty good down the stretch. Kind of vaulted them into the play-in tournament. And then Kobe White didn't shoot the ball very well. 5 of 20 from the floor, 7 turnovers. Not going to get it done in a win or go home game, especially against a well-coached team like the Heat. But that doesn't make me believe in Kobe White less just because of one bad play-in game. His numbers did improve from the year before, which was his breakout season. I didn't expect his numbers to improve by that much at all, honestly. I expected them to slightly regress. And that was mostly because I thought, okay, Josh Giddey's here now. He's going to need the ball. They're saying Lonzo Ball's healthy. He's going to need the ball. And he was fairly healthy. Zach LaVine's back. He's going to need the ball. How does Kobe White play in? I was very afraid that Chicago was going to not prioritize Kobe White. That's not what happened. I was wrong. The rebounds and assists dropped slightly. The points went up. Field goal percentage went up. And especially down the stretch, he had some really good shooting nights. Just because I don't think that he is a superstar or an all-star talent doesn't mean he's not a really, really good player. And I think he's valuable in dynasty leagues, especially if Chicago just keeps trying to make this thing work. I think there's a difference between what I think that they should do and what I think that they will do. I think that they should, try and trade away some of these more valuable players, get a hard reset, truly reset, because I don't think that they ever really did that. Just didn't happen. Even when they were, I guess, in their rebuilding years, and they drafted Wendell Carter, drafted Kobe White, drafted Patrick Williams. Kobe White has panned out, but I think that's going 1 for 3 on your picks. And now they've been fairly competitive since then, but they built that team through trades and free agency, getting Zach LaVine, getting DeMar DeRozan, getting Lonzo Ball, getting Vucevic. And there's that kind of caps your timeline. If you're acquiring older players that are wanting to get paid and win as opposed to younger players who are looking to develop, you have a shorter timeline, and they were derailed by injuries. So I would like to see a hard reset from the Bulls. I think it makes sense. But Kobe White is, I mean, I don't think that they're going to do that. I think Kobe White is going to continue to be the number one scoring option here. He's only 25. I think he still has room to grow. Just finished just inside the top 75 in 9-cat leagues this year. He has room to grow, but it's not going to be substantial growth. This is probably what he is, but if he can be a top 75 player for 5 years, that's very valuable in 9-cat leagues. We just need to understand that his strengths, points, threes, the free throw percentage with decent assists, but not expecting those to really grow, especially if they give a really big contract to Josh Giddey. He's their point guard. You're not signing Josh Giddey to a massive contract to get him off the ball. You're signing him to a big contract because you want the ball in his hands. But that doesn't mean that Kobe White won't have it too. Not too much to be worried about here. I think the main concern would be is if Chicago actually does the smart thing and kind of resets their team, then it would be like, okay, like Kobe White would have trade interest. Because even if Kobe White, is a player that is fun to watch and you want to have around, he would almost be too good to have this team rebuild. So I think it would be difficult to play both sides of wanting to keep Kobe White and make him a Chicago Bull forever and wanting to rebuild and have this team be a championship winning team. But we'll see. I'm not too worried about Kobe White playing for a different team at this point. I think his role and his team are going to stay consistent for at least a few years. All right, who else do we have in Chicago? Because there are more players to talk about. Not too many that are super in-depth discussions. But we will talk about rookie Modest Buzelis, who averaged 8.6 points, 3.5 rebounds, 1 assist. I thought that there were some very fun flashes during his rookie year. Was kind of quiet during that play-in game, but first taste of postseason action against a team full of players that have been in the playoffs for years in Miami. Not too concerned about this guy who is going to turn 21 just before the season starts. Had some, I guess, showed some 9-cat appeal with the shot blocking, which we saw in the G League as well. And then the 3-point shooting, especially down the stretch, started to figure that out. Had some big scoring nights, had some solid passing nights. Rebounds were on and off. I think his numbers kind of over the final couple of weeks of the season were pretty encouraging compared to his season-long numbers. So, and I think that he is the player on this team that has the young star upside. Now they'll add someone else in the lottery, but I don't think anybody else on this team has that because they really haven't been able to make many picks recently. I mean, Patrick Williams, they hoped would have it for a while. I was not really a believer in Patrick Williams, but I think he's solid. I think if they have a player to build around right now, it is Buzelis. As far as building for the future. For right now, Kobe White's the best player. But if you're building for the future, Buzelis is probably the guy right now. I don't feel phenomenal about that. But just looking at some splits, small sample size, but in April, he averaged 13.4 points, 5.3 rebounds, 1.7 assists, 1.1 steals, 1.4 blocks, and 2 threes. Shot 54.8% from the floor, 50% from three. Those are great numbers. I think the assists came on and off. They weren't great overall. I'm not expecting him to be a elite playmaker, but if he can continue to improve, he's got to get stronger. But if he can continue to improve as a scorer, supply more offense, and I think strength and experience will definitely help that. And consistently hit threes. A lot of the 9-cat value is going to come from the defensive stats and the threes for him, which is fine. There's a lot of players who do that, but we enjoy and covet those types of players that can give you really good 3-point and defensive value. It's valuable in 9-cat leagues, especially for a guy so young. And I think he does have the upside to be a solid scorer. I don't think he's a 25 point per game scorer, but I think we could easily see like him continue to improve and average like an efficient 17, 7, 2.5 assists, a steal, block and a half, 2+ threes. We could see that for sure from him. And I think he is the player to probably invest in a dynasty league from this team, plus whoever they draft in the lottery this year. Maybe they'll have some luck and hop up, but they right now have the 12th best odds. But this wouldn't be a terrible location for a lot of different players in this draft to end up. If Chicago hops up, it's a nice balance of a guy like Dylan Harper, Ace Bailey would see a lot of minutes early on, but they would also be playing more of a role as opposed to just immediately being handed the keys from day one, get to learn from players who have been around the league a little bit and play with expectations to win as opposed to just playing for a rebuild. It's a different scenario from some of the other teams at the top. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out for the lottery. Now we'll, I guess, kind of quickly go through some of these other guys because those are the upside swings, I think. The players that have that tremendous value. Vucevic is going to continue to be Vucevic, but he's aging. How much longer can he do that? How much longer do they want him to do that? Coming off a great season, I think he still has value for win now teams. Kevin Huerter, again, fairly young, but like not too much upside there. I thought he played well after getting traded there. Is he still a starter next season when everyone's healthy? I think he at least plays a large role. Good value from beyond the arc, but I don't think he really is going to see enough minutes when everyone's healthy for him to be a great 9-cat player. But you can rely on him for threes. Ayo Dosunmu had the season-ending injury. I think he'll be back to start next season. I don't think there's been any reports that indicate otherwise. And he's gotten better every year. So I guess he is a player that I would also be keeping my eye on just to see if he can continue to take steps or if this is just kind of who he is. But if what he is, which this year was 12.3 points, 3.5 rebounds, 4.5 assists, a little less than a steal, 1.3 threes. That's solid. I don't think he starts though next season. If we're just looking at what a starting lineup could look like, I think you pencil in Josh Giddey, Kobe White, Vucevic at center, hopefully Buzelis. Maybe Kevin Huerter is the starter. Maybe they are able to add someone else to be a starter. Maybe it's Patrick Williams if he takes a step forward over the summer. Maybe it's Lonzo Ball as a guard. And they haven't been shy about starting Dosunmu as kind of in like a 3-guard lineup as well. I think they even did a 4-guard lineup at one point this year. Strange. He definitely has value, but I question what his opportunity continues to look like. Trey Jones, unrestricted free agent. I don't foresee him re-signing. I think there's too many guards here, but he can still, just like his brother, Tyus Jones, solid assists without many turnovers. That's valuable. I think you can find a backup point guard role somewhere and have some streaming value when the starter's out. Again, I'm not a huge believer in Patrick Williams, but I think that there is still some upside there. I think basically everyone that is given the label of next Kawhi Leonard doesn't work out. But I think they obviously still believed in him enough to give him a contract, and he can still earn that or prove that he deserves that. And then the rest of the guys like Lonzo Ball, hopefully he's healthy. Julian Phillips and Dalen Terry still have some upside. Haven't shown a ton. I think Julian Phillips had a couple solid games, but haven't shown a ton. Zach Collins, Jalen Smith are still there. Both under contract for next year. Should be the backup centers. But I don't know. Chicago, I think at the trade deadline, the GM said that you can either build a team around stars or you can build a team with a lot of like 8 to 9 solid guys, and that's what they were going with. And I just don't agree. I don't think that there are teams that win NBA championships off the power of friendship. I just don't think it happens. I think it's a great idea, but in reality, the the power of friendship was also led by a 25 point per game or 30 point per game scorer. Like, I don't know. I think you could, don't mean to just make this all in the Chicago Bulls episode, but I'm just going to pull up the last NBA champions. Just look at them. Boston beat Dallas. Jason Tatum / Jaylen Brown. Also just ridiculously stacked team. Probably 4 or 5 players better than almost everyone on the Bulls. Beat Dallas, led by Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving. Denver defeats Miami. Jokic and Jamal Murray, who plays like a superstar in the playoffs, beats insane run Miami Heat, led by Jimmy Butler, playing like a top 5 player in the NBA. Warriors beat Celtics. Steph Curry. Bucks beat Suns. Giannis. Also Drew Holiday and Chris Middleton playing phenomenally. The Suns, Devin Booker. Chris Paul. Lakers beat Heat. LeBron James, Anthony Davis. Jimmy Butler. Raptors beat Warriors. Who remembers that Kawhi Leonard run? Beat the Warriors, who had that Steph Curry KD team. Then you're going back to the Warriors Cavs team. Cavs finals. You can't tell me that. Just before that, Spurs. Kawhi Leonard was playing like that. Back-to-back Heat. Mavs with Dirk. Lakers with Kobe. Celtics with KG, Paul Pierce. Right? Like, you have somebody that is playing like a top 5 player in the NBA. I don't think anybody on Chicago is that caliber of player. How do you get that? I think the path is in the lottery. We'll see if they listen to me or if they're forced to listen to me by having some luck in the lottery. But we'll see that in less than a week. That's going to do it for this episode. Let's see who we talk about next time. I believe it will be the Sacramento Kings. So I probably will just copy and paste a lot of my topics from this episode and hope that they listen to me. But we'll talk about some of their specific players and where they can go from here. That's going to do it for this episode of the Young Man Squad Fantasy Basketball Podcast. You can follow me on Twitter at NoahRubin22. You can like, subscribe, comment. Would be much appreciated. And I will see you next time.